Hello everyone, what is up? It is me, AlbyMTG, and today I decided to do something kind of cool. So with the entire set of Dominaria officially spoiled, now everyone is in that little state of 1 week where we get to do a little bit of pre-release prep before we actually get our hands on the cards and we get to actually play with them. Everyone is going to be doing some practice beforehand. So normally what I do for practice, I'm going to have an entire video coming out later this week that'll go over some tips and some resources that you guys can use to help win your own pre-releases, but for the time being, one of the resources that I do use is magicdrafting.com/Dominaria-sealed. This is going to allow us to do our own practice sealed pool in the same way that we would open up a potential pre-release pack by clicking this button. It'll show us a potential pre-release pack that we could open, and then we can use that to try and build our own deck. This is a very, very good tool, which again I'll talk about later in another video that I'm going to be making later on this week, talking about pre-release preparation. But as a former pre-release winner, I have won 2 free copies of From the Vault lore just for doing well in pre-release events. And I wish I had the number off the top of my head of how many pre-release events I've won throughout the course of my Magic career, but I don't have the exact number, but I believe it's somewhere along the lines of 7 to 10, somewhere in there. So I've definitely sealed and limited are definitely my things, and this is just one of the tools that I use to always help me do well. So if you guys would want to do well, I definitely recommend this as well. So what we're gonna do here today is I'm gonna go through my very first try at a Dominaria sealed pool. I'm gonna go ahead and talk through some of the cards, and we're gonna go ahead and click this button here so it'll generate a pre-release pool for us. And you guys will get to hear my very first opinions as I see these cards and as I look at my very first card pool. So here I'm seeing not a lot of great white cards. This Dauntless Bodyguard is good. We do have 4 copies of Blessed Light. However, Blessed Light, it's a good removal spell, instant speed, which is fantastic, and can hit creatures and enchantments. So it's a little bit versatile, or not versatile, a little bit you know mobile, or able to hit 2 different possible things. Other than that, it's not really great. 5 mana to just hold it up. It's going to be very easy to predict whenever somebody else has a Blessed Light. Whenever you're playing in your actual events and someone passes the turn with 5 mana up, one of which is white, you can kind of assume that Blessed Light may be coming at some point. Along with the Dauntless Bodyguard, in terms of good cards we have here, On Sarah's Wings is quite strong, and Sanctum Spirit is pretty strong as well. Aside from that, though, we don't really have a ton of good white cards. Gideon's Reproach is decent removal as well. But we'll go ahead and take a look at the blue here. I'm not overly impressed with what I'm seeing so far from the white cards that we've opened. Here in black, or not in black, in blue, we opened up 3 rares, it looks like, in blue, one of which being Karn's Temporal Sundering. So this allows us to take an extra turn and bounce something to his owner's hand, as long as we control legendary permanent to be able to cast this. We opened up, this would most likely be our pre-release foil here, this Precognition Field, which is a decent little card, not great, helps us remove lands from the top of our deck in the late game, which can be nice, but 4 mana to not impact the board is a little clunky, to say the least. And then Tempest Djinn, not fantastic for limited. It's most likely, it can get bigger over time, and most of the time when you're casting it, it's a 3/4 flyer, but you're not going to be casting it on turn 3. You're most likely going to end up casting it somewhere around turn 5 to turn 6, assuming you hit all your land drops. Then you'll most likely get the Tempest Djinn down. This is much more of a constructed card, which again, I did a deck tech, a budget mono blue flyers deck earlier on this week that you guys can check out on the channel here if you guys are interested in seeing a Tempest Djinn deck. Aside from that, Academy Drake is perfectly fine. Journey Mage is not great, but if we have enough wizards, it's fine. Again, I'm not really impressed with what I'm seeing here from the blue cards. So we'll go on to the black cards, and notably, this is up here with the blue cards for some reason. So we do have a Cabal Evangel to think about here as well as we look down into our black cards. So what I'm seeing here from the black cards is that we opened up a lot of them, which is, it can be very nice. as long as they are of reasonable power level. And right now, with what I'm seeing, they are of reasonable power level. Cast down is pretty strong. A Knight of Malice, not too bad. Lingering Phantom, not great, but reasonable filler in the sealed environment. 2 decent combat tricks, and we opened up an entire playset of Deathbloom Thallid, which is just a nice little 3-drop. It's not fantastic, but it's not too bad either. And then in terms of a very good spell here, we have an exile target creature, put 2 loyalty counters on a planeswalker we control. Most likely in sealed we're not going to be able to put 2 loyalty counters on a planeswalker we control, but nonetheless, 4 mana sorcery to exile target creature can be very good. And then we do have even more black cards down here. Nothing too crazy though. Some 6 mana toppers over here. Another fungal, or not another, but a fungal infection which creates a Saproling as well. So maybe down in our multicolored, if we opened up Slimefoot or whatever the green-black Saproling Lord is, or not Lord, but card is, we can probably put together a decent Saproling deck. But first we're going to take a look at what we have here in red, and it does look like we opened up a decent amount of red cards as well. So Phoenix is fine. This card doesn't impress me very much for limited, but a 3 mana 3/2 could be worse. 5 mana for 5 damage to a creature, like it's removal, but it's extremely slow. Aside from that, there's not really a ton here. These Keldon Overseers are decent filler cards too. 3 mana for a 3/1 with haste, and then late in the game we can steal one of our opponent's creatures to attack for a turn. Radiant Lightning's not too bad either. 4 mana, deals 3 damage to target player and 1 damage to each creature that player controls. It would be much better if it could go 3 damage to target player or creature. However, still not the worst card in the world. Skirk Protector, or Skirk Prospector is pretty strong. Actually, the more I think about it, the Radiant Lightning really isn't that fantastic. Only being able to go to the dome, it might be more of just a sideboard card. Later on in this format, though, we'll be able to find out a little bit more about that. But yeah, I'm starting to second guess what I said about Radiant Lightning. I don't think it's quite as good as I originally read it as. Warlord's Fury is fine. It cantrips. There's worse things you can have. It's sorcery speed instead of instant speed, which is kind of unfortunate. Here in green, we do have 2 Llanowar Elves, which could be nice, but we don't really have a ton of green cards to go along with them. Thorn Elemental is decent in the late game, actually quite strong in the late game. And then these Primordial Worms don't really impress me too much. If they had some sort of keyword on them, like maybe Trample, that would be a lot better. Oath of Teferi here, that's probably not something I'm looking too far into playing right now. 2 copies of Shauna Sisei's Legacy is kind of interesting. If we end up in a green-white kind of go-wide strategy type of deck. Here we have 3 rares that we opened up. Traxos, Scourge of Krug, which is kind of an interesting card, a 4 mana 7/7, but we do need to cast some historic spells to untap him. Gilded Lotus is just fine if we want to ramp and try and add some things to the board in the late game. We can up our mana curve a little bit if we decide to play this Gilded Lotus. And then Mishra's Self-Replicator is 5 mana for a 2/2. Whenever you cast a historic spell, you may pay 1. If you do create a token, that's a copy of Mishra's Self-Replicator. So this card's kind of interesting. So basically, the first time you cast it, you'll have the Mishra's Self-Replicator. Then you cast your first historic spell, you get 1 trigger, and you can make an additional Mishra's Self-Replicator. Then the next time you cast a historic spell, you'll get 2 triggers then, because you'll have 2 Self-Replicators. And then it can just get kind of out of hand if you do have enough artifacts or just historic spells in general to make it work. So I think it's a kind of a neat card. And we did open up a lot of, quite a lot of artifacts, which again would be historic to kind of work with Mishra's Self-Replicator and to work as well with this Traxos as well. So that's kind of where I'm leaning right now. My first initial thought is that I'm not overly impressed with any of the colors specifically. I do kind of like what we had here in black with these Thallid guys, Cast Down being a great removal spell, and then Knight of Malice not being too bad either at a 2/2 first strike with Hexproof from white as well. And then we do have a nice little 4-mana removal spell here. So I think what I'm going to do is just take some of these black cards first. So the Cast Down, the Knight, most likely the Phantom, settle the score. We'll probably end up playing both of these combat tricks just because we do seem fairly low on what we have in terms of removal. This one cares about historic spells again, so I think we might end up building like a historic kind of themed deck. So I don't mind putting him in there, even though he is a 4-mana creature with only 2 toughness. This card seems fine. It's not fantastic, but seems okay. Some bigger curve things here. We probably won't need anything else here. Sack another creature to give it +2/+2. If a Saproling was sacked this way, gain 2 life. Yeah, I'm not overly impressed with the remainder of these cards. Possibly if we need an additional playable at the end, then Demonic Vigor and Fungal Infection are cards that I would think about. So coming back down to what we would end up playing in terms of these historic cards. So Traxos definitely gets in if we're trying to build the historic deck. Self-Replicator gets in. Gilded Lotus, I'm still kind of thinking about. We can probably play Gilded Lotus. If we're trying to play these historic cards, though, I kind of want to play some of these 1-mana cards. So this Sparring Construct, this Candle, this Short Sword, and this Compass. They are very innocuous, but they do trigger all of the historic things that we have. And if we're playing a historic-based deck, then it can definitely be beneficial for us to be playing these cards. And then a card that's going to be very important for us here is this Voltaic Servant. So at the beginning of your end step, untap target artifact. If we don't cast another historic spell to be able to untap our Traxos, then Voltaic Servant can untap the Traxos so we can continue beating in with our 7/7 Trampler over and over again. The Surveyor is not bad. I don't mind playing the Surveyor. It's not fantastic, but it's fine. And actually, now that I'm kind of thinking about it, since we're going to be playing so many colorless cards, this allows us to play cards from multiple colors, so we don't have to just lock ourselves into 2 colors. If we know that we're going to end up playing additional artifacts that don't require a specific mana to be cast for them, like a specific color to be used on them, then we don't really need to worry about our mana restrictions too much, and that kind of leads me to wanting to take a look at some of the other colors then. So in terms of other colors, I don't mind trying to go for some of these green cards, like Thorn Elemental, we already talked about, was a pretty good way to close out the game, along with our Thraxos down here. So I think this entire deck basically revolves around Thraxos and the historic kind of mechanic, if you can consider it that. So Juggernaut, I don't think Juggernaut's quite where we want to be. Guardian of Koilos, possibly, but I think we have enough good cards already if we end up trying to go for this green route here. So we can add in the Llanowar Elves, some additional ramp, which can be very beneficial because we do have some higher stuff here on the mana curve, like a 6-drop, some 5-drops, things like that. One of which including the Gilded Lotus, so the faster we can get to the Gilded Lotus, the better. And then we can end up playing this Thorn Elemental. Adventurous Impulse is probably fine. We can reveal a creature or a land. I think that's okay. It's not too bad, but it's not too great at the same time. I think it's reasonable enough for us to play it. But I guess we should take a look at how many creatures we have here. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15 creatures. And we have, actually this is 23 cards already. Interesting. Trying to see, do we want to play this guy? Like, this guy doesn't have trample, which is kind of unfortunate. But at the same time, if we're playing two Blessing of Bells and Locks, if we target this guy with the Blessings, then we have the potential to gain 22 life and attack with a 22-21. Huh. That seems pretty good. I wish we had more ways to give it trample, though. The fact that it doesn't have trample is kind of unfortunate. Yeah, there's really nothing we can do about that. There's nothing that gives it trample. I don't think there's anything of these other colors that would give it trample either. I guess there's a Run Amok. But then we're talking about splashing Run Amok, and I don't think that's something we want to do. I think he might get in. And then do we want to play Yavimaya Shepherd? Or Sapherd, I guess is how that would be pronounced. I don't think so. I think we have enough 3-drops already. So let's take a look at this mana curve. We do have a lot of 1-drops, so most of the time we will be playing something on turn 1, which is not normally something that you would care too much about in limited, or at least in sealed. I think this deck is kind of sweet though, kind of like a green-black historic deck. Yeah, I kind of like this. And then in terms of, so this is how many cards? This is 24 cards. So we can make one cut. Probably. It's probably just like one of the Thalids. Maybe even the Surveyor. The Surveyor's not like great. Kind of like having it though as another historic card. This is like, these are the really interesting decisions to be made right here, is when you're on like your very last cut that you need to decide. And then we can start talking about a mana base. Because we want to be able to stay alive long enough to be able to cast all of our good late game stuff, like the Thorn Elemental, Grun, and Traxos, as well as get the Mishra Self-Replicator going as well. So I think what I'm looking at here is just cutting one of the 3-drops. It's not overly impressive to me, and then our mana curve ends up looking a little something like this, which I think is reasonable. Not fantastic, but fairly reasonable. So that is 23 cards, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 black cards, 1, 2, 3, 4 green cards. Notably, it would be nice to have green on turn 1, so we would be able to play the Llanowar Elves to be able to start ramping a little bit earlier on. And so I think because of that, I want to see something like 6 green, 11 black, or 7. This might be a 7-10 deck. 7 green, 10 black. 7 green, 10 black. That sounds right. Oh, we have a Woodland Cemetery here as well. So, with Woodland Cemetery, probably... So we can't use Woodland Cemetery to cast our Llanowar Elves on turn 1, so probably 7 green, 9 black, and a Woodland? No. Actually, yeah, that's probably right. 7 green, 9 black, and a Woodland Cemetery. So, Woodland Cemetery, 7 green, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 9 black. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. And I believe this would be the deck that I would sleeve up. It's kind of we don't know how fast the format's going to end up being. This deck does kind of dirtle a little bit, but I do kind of like it. If we can ever get this Traxos down, I'm pretty sure we're just winning the game. And I do like having this Mistress Self-Replicator along with all of these 1-drops as well. I think there might be an argument, again, because we're playing so many colorless spells, there might be an argument that we could probably splash something. Like, we might be able to splash this Recognition Field, but I think diluting our deck to play the Recognition Field probably is not where we want to be. We could splash an On Sarah's Wings. That's not the worst. Enchanted creature is legendary, gets +1/+1, flying, vigilance, and lifelink. That would be another good way to get through some damage with Grun, as well as we could just put that on one of these things like the Cabal Paladin, then hits for 5 in the air with lifelink, so that's a 10-point swing. Giving it to this Lingering Phantom as well, that would be a 12-point swing if Lingering Phantom ever got on. And by swing, I mean, so our life total would increase by 6 and their life total would decrease by 6, meaning there would be a difference there in 12. Not that we'd be attacking for 12, but that overall the life totals would change by 12 in our favor. So yeah, I think this is probably what I would end up with. Like, the On Sarah's Wings is tempting, but what card do we cut for it is the question. Because I think the rest of our cards are all just super reasonable already. Like, maybe one of these combat tricks I could see. Yeah, I could actually see that. I could see cutting one of these combat tricks and then grabbing On Sarah's Wings and then adding 1 plains, cutting 1 forest. Yeah, so normally in Limited, you want to be able to have 3, if you're splashing for only 1, for 1 pip, where is the On Sarah's Wings? So we only need 1 white at any point in the game to be able to cast this. We want to normally have at least 3 sources that would enable us to cast, or to create that white mana, and we do have actually 4 sources. We have the basic plains as 1 source. We have the Skittering Surveyor, which can find our basic plains, which counts as 2 sources. We have the Navigator's Compass, which again I've already talked about. If you guys have seen my other video, you know the Navigator's Compass is in fact my favorite card in the set, and so I'm actually kind of excited that I'd be able to play with this crappy common that already has a special place in my heart. So this also, until end of turn, target land you control becomes the basic land type of your choice. So we could turn one of our Swamps into a Plains, and then it would tap for white mana, so we would be able to then cast the On Sarah's Wings as well. And then we have the Gilded Lotus for later in the game. We can add 3 white to our mana pool using the Gilded Lotus. So yeah, I think something like this is 40 cards. I think I would probably try and sleeve up something like this if this was my pool. Again, this is my very first time going through a Dominaria sealed pool. I still have yet to actually listen to some set reviews and to go through and kind of analyze the entire set card by card and start figuring out things like that. But I believe this is what I would sleeve up, and I think it looks fairly solid. We'll go ahead and just look at 3 sample hands, I guess, and we'll see if maybe if maybe the generator wants to be nice to us in these 3 sample hands. So here, this would be a fairly good hand. We would have the Llanowar Elves on turn 1, which is sweet. And then we can draw into some hopefully non-land cards. So yeah, if we're drawing this Deathbloom Thallid and our Llanowar Elves lives, then on turn 2 we're playing this Deathbloom Thallid. What did we draw? We drew a Cast Down. On turn 3 we're playing this Cabal Paladin. We'll draw another card, and then on turn 4 we can play Cast Down one of their creatures, Navigator's Compass plus Sparring Construct, meaning that we would get 2 triggers off of the Cabal Paladin, so we're also dealing 4 damage to our opponent off of Cabal Paladin triggers, which is pretty sweet. So again, we'll try and generate another sample hand here and see what we can get. This hand is significantly worse. This is most likely a mulligan. It's not the best hand. It's very slow. In sealed, you can get away with being slower than if it was draft. But again, I think this is just a little bit too slow. We don't want the 7 drop and the 6 drop in our deck in our opening hand. So I believe this would be a mulligan. And we'll go ahead and take a look at another. And then this one I believe would be a keep as well. Turn 1 we can play the Short Sword. Turn 2 Voltaic Servant. Turn 3 the Thallid. And then we'll go ahead and just see what else we would draw. Cabal Paladin, sure. Another Thallid, sure. One of our combat tricks. And then the Onsera's Wings would be sitting in our hand until we could hit. So we'll see how long it takes us to actually hit something that would make us be able to cast the Onsera's Wings. So Cast Down doesn't do it. Land doesn't do it. I believe we drew Navigator's Compass. So Navigator's Compass would enable us to be able to cast the Onsera's Wings then. So yeah, one more time, I'll go ahead and show current deck. This is the deck that I would have put together based off of the sealed pool that I was given. And again, this is using magicdrafting.com/Dominaria-sealed. This is the website that I use the most. There is another website you can use called DraftSim. Let me just go ahead and click theirs really quickly. So what's kind of interesting about DraftSim is that they have a feature that whenever you generate the pool, they have this auto build feature, so they can show you what they would build out of any given pool, which looks like they had Atraxos as well, so they would have gone for something similar. But based on what I'm seeing here, this is one of the reasons of why I'm not super big on DraftSim. I much prefer magicdrafting.com. This auto build feature just isn't for me. I much prefer to go and do the in-depth things, but if you're just starting out, then like if you're going to your very first pre-release Dominaria, your very first pre-release, I would recommend DraftSim instead. Go ahead and look at some of the auto builds and kind of see why they were putting together the decks that they were putting together. But again, Magic Drafting, if you're much more familiar with the cards, or if this isn't your first pre-release, if you have a couple of pre-releases under your belt, then I definitely recommend magicdrafting.com instead. So yeah, one more time, I'll scroll down here. This is the deck that I would have put together, my very first pre-release pool for Dominaria. I hope you all did enjoy it. I'll be doing many, many more of these throughout the course of the week. And again, I said that I'd be doing that video where I talk about some resources and some tools that can help you win your pre-release, just like I've been winning my pre-releases. And so I hope you guys look forward to that. Be sure to subscribe as well as click the like button. Subscribing gets you notified so that you know as soon as I upload that video. That way you can do much better at your pre-releases than possibly you've been doing in the past, and you can learn some of the tools that have helped me be successful at pre-release and things like that. So with that being said, again, click the subscribe button if you guys did enjoy it. Click the like button if you guys found this helpful. And I hope to see you guys in the comment section in future videos. That would be absolutely fantastic. But for the time being, this is all I have for tonight. I hope you guys did enjoy my first look at trying a Dominaria sealed pool. And I will talk to you guys later, and I will see you guys tomorrow.